So I'm gonna give you 4 things that have been really helpful for me that I think that we need to pay attention to as people who are following after Jesus, as people who are thinking about what does it mean for us to be renewed and to be restored. Now, I grew up playing this game called Tetris. Anybody know about Tetris? It's an amazing game. I love it. It's kind of the way my brain works. The way my brain works is like, with Tetris, you see like all these pieces falling, and then you have to like move it and shift it and change it, and then you gotta make sure that everything gets this row, and once that row gets all the blocks, that row goes down, it goes away. So how you know you're winning the game is if the space from the top and the space from your top row like gets bigger. And one of the ways you do that is by having all of these little blocks connect to each other, and then you start to see the progress. When I look at these 4 things, it's kind of like that Tetris thing, where if you were to put all these things together, I think you would begin to see some progress happening in your life. When connected, there will be some progress. So, as a disciple of Jesus, here are 4 things I think that really matter for you to see some progress and renewal in your life. Number 1 is information. Discipleship is about learning and growing and understanding Scripture, understanding what it means to follow Jesus, understanding the faith that we are a part of. That part of this discipleship is learning. That we are putting ourselves in spaces and we're encountering God in different ways so that our mind is to be renewed and transformed. One of the ways that I have done this since I was young is when someone preaches on a Sunday. Now, I don't do this all the time, but when I'm in a season where I'm like, I really need to grow, I need to learn. What I'll do is I'll listen to someone preach, like today on a Sunday. I'll take their points, I'll take their quotes, I'll take the scriptures that they're reading, I'll write all that stuff down as they're preaching, and then that week, that becomes my study. That like for this sermon, you would take it and you would start digging into what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus. So then now the information that you are learning comes from a particular place, and you're saying, I'm gonna put my attention on learning and growing and understanding what it means to be a disciple. Now, this information part is not information as a weapon. Can I say that again? When we talk about information as disciples, we're not talking about information as a weapon. Because some of us learn about Scripture and learn about the Word and learn about what it means to follow Jesus so that we can argue with people. And what Paul is saying to Timothy is that's not the reason for this. He says this in Timothy chapter 2. He said, don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments because you know they produce quarrels. And the Lord's servants must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach and not resentful. So this part of what it means to grow and be a disciple of Jesus is not about us just learning more about God and learning more about Scripture so we can fight folks. But it's so that we can have an answer, so that we can be developed and know what it means to follow after Jesus. So number 1 is information. Number 2 is participation. Part of what discipleship means is that you are actively involved in things that are growing your faith. Let me say this to you. If you are gaining information as a disciple of Jesus, but you are not participating in the life of community, then you are missing out on what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. The question here is, are you in a small group? Are you learning and growing in what it means to be in community with people? Are you going to a Bible study? Are you going to these core labs that we keep telling you about that are meant to help you learn and understand and be in community with other people? Are you serving at the food pantry? Are you giving of your money? This is what it means to participate in your own discipleship. This is what it means to go from information to participation. And then thirdly, it is formation. So information, participation, formation. This means that you are going deeper into your whole life as discipleship. What that looks like is that you are now inviting God into the conversation about what you eat, the way you spend your time, the way you communicate, your road rage, your snarky comments, your family systems, and the things that are challenging to you. What this means is formation is saying, I'm not just going to depend on what it means to learn and understand the Bible. I'm not just going to be in community with people, but I'm actually going to dig and ask some hard questions and say, God, what is it about my life that does not look like you? And how do you want to change me? One of the ways that I have been doing this, and I'm doing this right now, is I am in counseling. I am doing EMDR. Do you guys know what that is? It's basically it's trauma therapy. You know from some of my stories, a lot of trauma. So trauma therapy. And then I have a spiritual director. And here's what a spiritual director does. It is a person who sits with you and begins to ask questions to help you see where God is active in your life. That this person would sit down with you and help you become aware and say, where are the places that God is wanting to change you or renew you or develop you? Where does God want to show you more of his love and his grace? Where does God want to challenge you in your life? Can we see and pay attention to his movement? So we have information, participation, formation, and lastly, we have demonstration. Demonstration is that you are passing on what you are learning to someone else. That part of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus is not that you are just gaining all of these things for yourself, but that you are giving them away. There's a prominent church leader in the UK named David Watson. And he said this in his book on disciple making. He said, the very act of mentoring changes and matures the mentor as well as the mentee. This is the reason it's so important to encourage mentees to mentor others. Unless and until they mentor others, the mentoring process is of limited value. When I started teaching piano, I became a much better piano player. When I started developing worship leaders and teaching them what it means to worship, I became a much better worship leader. Because part of this process is that what it means to be a disciple is that when you give away what you know, you learn in the process of giving. You are developed in the process of developing. And what is true is that I believe that, I know this is true for me and it's probably true for a lot of folks, is this is one of the harder things to do. And part of the reason is because our culture has kind of trained us to say, you know what, the most important thing right now is just that you get to chill. That you get to just have your life. You get to just hang out and do what you need to do. We don't want to be inconvenienced by having to bring someone alongside of us, letting them come into our home, training them, teaching them, taking time to show them the scripture, taking time to give away what we have. But what I want to press in on us today is that discipleship is not primarily programmatic, service-driven, event-attending activity. Let me say it again. Discipleship is not primarily programmatic, service-driven, event-attending activity. That part of what we are doing here today is gathering to learn and be discipled, but this cannot be the primary thing. That this is a part of our discipleship, but the other pieces of our discipleship, which is giving away to other people, being in relational community with folks. Discipleship is one-to-one. It is younger with older. It is peer-to-peer. It is people in relationship. Jesus changed the course of history by having relational discipleship with 12 people. This is what it means to follow after Jesus. I want to tell you about this dream I had. I had this dream about a year ago. And in the dream, I saw this acronym that said HERD. It was HERD. And in the dream, it said, helping everyone rediscover discipleship. Now, this was like a year ago. This is in April of 2024. I had not even preached at this church. So I didn't know that the Lord might use this one day. But in April of this year, I was reminded of this dream as I was preparing for this sermon. And what I did was that morning, I started to do a deep dive into like shepherding and herding. And what I discovered is that when shepherds are taking their sheep, they use their crook or their staff and they move the sheep from one place to another. They steer them from one place to another. But then once they get there, they allow the sheep to just roam and to feed. That the shepherd isn't taking food and putting it in their mouths. The shepherd isn't exactly telling them exactly where to go to eat. The shepherd is paying attention and saying, oh, that one looks like it's going too far over there. I'm going to help this one out. Come and graze over in this direction. And part of what I believe rediscovering discipleship is that we put the church and we put pastors and leaders in their rightful place. As a pastor, what my responsibility is, what our pastoral team's responsibility is to lead you and steer you into places where you can self-feed. It's not just for you to come on a Sunday and eat. It is for us to say, hey, we believe that God is speaking this. We believe that God is moving us in this direction. We believe that God is giving us this vision for our church. And now it is your turn to self-feed. And part of what that means is that you are bringing other people alongside of you. Because what is true is that in order for you to be fully nourished, what is happening for 30 minutes of preaching on a Sunday is not enough. You being in a group with people is not enough. You hanging out with your friend, you doing a Bible reading plan is not enough on its own. You going to counseling is not enough on its own. But when we put all of these things together, when we marry information with participation, with formation, with demonstration, it is enough for us to be fully nourished, to see God change us and move us into being disciples of Jesus. We experience what it means to be renewed and restored and to be fully nourished as followers of Jesus when we put all of these things together. So 2 questions I have for you today. Is there a process for your progress? And secondly, do you have people in your life that you are helping to move through discipleship, to say yes to Jesus?